Hello and welcome to this video on career decision making and planning. My name is Matt Jones and I'm one of the careers advisors here at York St John University, and I'll be talking to you a little bit today about the career planning process, the decision making process, and how we can use this to support you to move forward towards your career in the future. Now, as you can imagine, as a careers advisor, we talk a lot about career decision making and the future. And from my conversations with students and graduates and alumni, I've sort of included some common statements, some common questions that I come across during careers guidance appointments. And I'd just like to spend a few moments just looking at them. So the first one is, what can I do with my degree? The second one is, I want to start thinking about my future, but I don't know where to begin. And the final one is, I've got a really clear idea what I'd like to do after graduation, but I'm not sure whether I'd like it or if it'd be a good fit for me. And the first thing I'd like to say is that all of these thoughts, these feelings, these questions are absolutely valid and normal. And it's really fantastic that you or the people within your cohort are really thinking about these questions and asking these questions, because they're really important. And in order to make a really considered, clear decision for the future that you can be confident about, it's really important that we think about these things and make sure things are going to be a good fit for us. And then if we focus on the first sort of statement first, which is, what can I do with my degree? This is a really common question. And my answer to this question is always the same. It's that while it's really valid to ask this question, it also sounds really restrictive. It sounds as though that you can only do a certain number of things or type of things with the degree that you've got. And that's simply not true. 86% of employers are degree agnostic, which means they don't really mind what degree that you have, provided that you've got the skills, the competencies, and the approach that is needed for the role that you're applying for. Okay, so what I would encourage you to do is to think not what can I do with my degree, but how could I utilize my degree to support me to do what I want to do. And I think focusing on you and what you want is really important within decision making. So before we get stuck in from a careers point of view, a careers perspective, I'd like to focus on food because, of course, food's amazing. So let's start with sort of an analogy around food and how that relates to decision making. So the example I've included here is around going out to a restaurant and eating. Okay, so the first one is basically we arrive at the restaurant. I'll set the scene. We arrive at a restaurant and we see our friends, and we haven't seen them in absolutely ages, and we're just so pleased to see them. Okay, so we sit down at our table and we start quickly looking through the menu, but really want to focus on chatting, and maybe the waiter or waitress has come around a few times to ask if we're ready to decide, and we're just not ready because we're so in depth in sort of talking. And finally the waiter comes round and you succumb to making a decision about what you'd like to eat, and because you've been talking so much, because your focus is on something else, you hastily pick something from the menu. Okay, so we've rushed straight into that decision making. We haven't really thought about it. Our mind is on other things, and we've just sort of picked something from the menu. Now, what that rushed decision making might end in is a mediocre menu choice. You might not be particularly happy with what you've ordered. You might have major food envy, which is something I'm sure we've all gone through at some point or another, looking at what other people have ordered and then looking back at what we've ordered and wish we'd ordered that. We might end up feeling really unfulfilled because actually what we've ordered doesn't sort of meet what we're hoping for from the experience. And finally, and this is probably most accurate in my circumstances, is that I just feel really disappointed that I didn't pick the duck dombiori that Sophie chose across the table. So what this highlights, this example, is that decision making isn't only important in careers, but generally as in life as individuals, and we can use career decision making, the process, to really help us not only in this circumstance, but more widely in different contexts. So I'd like to introduce the DOTS model in this process. So this is self, opportunities, decisions and transitions. Okay, and this is the process for career decision making, but we can apply it to the food scenario. So starting with self, which is the first stage of the process, at the table at the restaurant, we might think, right, well, what am I craving? How hungry am I? Could I cook this at home? So what do I really want from this experience? What do I want from the food at this restaurant? Do I want something that is a big portion, a small portion? What is it that I've been thinking about over the last few weeks and really hoping for from this meal? Do I want to pick something really ambitious that I couldn't make at home, or do I want something that I do at home quite often? So really thinking about what you are hoping for from this experience. Now, after that point, once we've decided what we're looking for, we can move around to opportunities. So what are the opportunities on the menu? What dishes are on offer? Is there a particular thing that this restaurant is famous for, that people flock here to come and eat? What are their specials? What are the sort of the more opportune things on the menu that we might not have had before or not available very often? And what I'd do is sort of look through the menu and start picking out things that are interesting, things that sort of interest me and make me sort of a little bit more hungry, I suppose. Then now the next stage is decision. So at some point the waiter or waitress will come back and ask what we want. So we need to be able to make a decision. Okay, so what we do at this point, we think about ourselves. So, okay, what am I craving? How hungry am I? Could I cook this at home? What do I feel about that? And then compare that to what dishes are on offer. Okay, and try to compare the two. So with that in mind, thinking about, right, which of the dishes that are on the menu will give me the taste that I want? Okay, which are the dishes that are most filling? Which are the dishes that I could never cook at home because it's too specialised or I don't have the ingredients? Okay, specifically on the menu. And then based on that, based on what we're hoping for, what our sort of self-concept is, what we're hoping for from the meal, we can make those decisions. And that transition, the final stage of the process, could be you, or rather me, ordering a duck donburi and a bowl of bang bang cauliflower because I'm really hungry and it's not something that I cook at home. So what this process can lead to is more considered decision making. You're thinking about yourself, you're putting yourself right in the centre of that decision making process. And when I talked before about not focusing too much on your degree, but focusing on you as a person and so thinking about how your degree can support you to do what you want to do, that's what this process is all about, putting yourself right in the centre of that decision making and making a decision that ultimately is going to be fulfilling and something that you're going to feel really confident about moving forward. So with that in mind then, just a reminder, this is the DOTS model that was created originally in 1977 by Lauren Watts. And as I say, it's cyclical, it's a process. We always start with self, we move round to opportunities, round to decisions and round to transitions. And as I mentioned, this process can really help you within your career development because sometimes it's just trying to identify what your next steps might be. Now, if you feel a bit lost or a bit unsure, this process can really help identify what those next steps are and identify opportunities for moving forward. So the first stage of the process is all around self, okay? And in the context of careers and your future and that sort of career decision making and planning, we really need to understand what we want at the moment. So that self-concept is around thinking about your skills, your strengths, your personality, your values, your interests, your goals, all those things that make you you, all those fantastic, brilliant things that we need to acknowledge. And that's why we're going to focus on this as a starting point, really identifying this version of self. Now you might think, self-concept, that sounds really abstract. Well, that's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some questions that I'd like you to think about that will help you to create that sort of self-concept and help you to establish the first process, I suppose, the first stage of the process in the DOTS model. So with self in mind, what I'd like you to do is take a pen and paper, if you have one, or a Word document or a notes function on your phone, and in a moment, after I've sort of gone through the questions, I'd like you to pause the video and think about answering some of these questions. Now, what this will help you to do is think about you from different perspectives and through different lenses, okay? So the first question that I'm going to encourage you to think about or to answer is, what does your version of success look like? What does success look like to you? Because that's really important. We're all different. What we want from life is very different. So thinking about what success means to you as an individual is a really important starting point. The next question is, what kind of life would you like to lead? The third question is, what do you want to be known for or known as? The fourth question is, what are your priorities right now? Because of course we've established they change over time, but what's important to you right now? What motivates or energizes you at work or when you think about career? What are your values and what do you stand for? What are your skills and strengths? What are your areas for development? And finally, are there any other things that you might need to consider, such as care responsibilities, a disability, where you'd like to live in the UK or across the world, things that don't quite fit into those other questions, okay? So what I'd like you to do is to take some time to make a list of the answers to these questions, okay? Now, once you've done that, like I say, take some time either now or after you've completed the video to make a list of these things. Now, once you've got a list of your answers, I'd like you to order them in terms of importance to you. So which answers, which elements, which factors are most important, put those right at the top of your list. And things that are less important, put them towards the bottom of your list. So by the time that you've done this, hopefully, if you split that list into 3, informally, roughly, the top third will be your needs, because those are the things that are most important to you. The second third of the list could be your wants, so things that are important but not quite as important as your needs. And the bottom third could be your negotiables, things that are important to you but could be negotiated for, the sort of the least important compared to the other factors, and we may be able to negotiate these as we go through the process. So things that you might thought were important but actually aren't in the grand scheme of things. Now at this point, we should have, hopefully, an idea of our self-concept, our self, and the things that are important to us. Now what you can do is put that list to the side for the moment, because we can move on to the next stage of the process, which is opportunities. Now, as I mentioned, this process is cyclical, so we move round to the next stage of the process. And the opportunity stage is all about you exploring opportunities that you find interesting. That's the only criteria that we're working to at the moment, is, do I find it interesting? Okay, so at this point we can search for pretty much any opportunities that exist. Now you might start with any ideas that you currently have, so add those to your list, make a list of those ideas, but then start looking at other places like LinkedIn Jobs, looking at the prospects job profiles, looking at Indeed, looking at some more specialist websites. So for example, if you are interested in science or technology, you might look at STEM graduates or STEM jobs. You might look at the university's jobs portal for roles that are being advertised at the moment. You might want to look at jobs in your local area. So at this stage of the process, all you are doing is looking at a really wide range of sources for opportunities for jobs that might be of interest to you. And if you find them interesting, add them to your list. So you might end up with a list of maybe 30 or 40 jobs at this point. Now you might think, blimey Matt, I've gone from having no ideas to 40 ideas. That's really overwhelming, but that's okay, because at the next stage of the process, which is decisions, we're going to be focusing on whittling that list down. So at the decision stage, what we're trying to do is to bring back that self-concept list that you made right at the start, the ordered list of things that are important to you. And we can also, side by side, bring in the opportunities list, the list of jobs that you find interesting. Now, at the decision-making stage, we are trying to whittle down the opportunities and basically trying to ultimately decide which of these opportunities will ultimately give us what we want from our career, because not all of those opportunities might be aligned to your idea of success. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to look for some commonality between the two lists. Ultimately, which of these jobs are going to give us what we want. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is go through the list of the opportunities and basically decide whether you think, based on the research that you've done, whether that role will give you what you want. If it's a yes, that's great, keep it on the list. If it's not, you might want to remove it or put it to the side. If you're unsure, that's fine as well. It might be that you just need to do a little bit more research in order to determine whether that is in line with your idea of success. So at this point, like I said, like it says on the screen, we're whittling down opportunities, applying these to your own situation and taking action, or rather preparing ourselves to take action. Now, at this stage of the process, it could be, we've talked about jobs, looking through job opportunities. Equally, it could be master's opportunities, different universities and what they've got to offer. It could be different training opportunities. This process is really flexible. But hopefully, through working through this process, and certainly the decision-making stage, we might have gone from a list of 30 or 40 ideas of jobs that we'd like, and actually we might only find that only 3 or 4 meet our criteria. And that's a really great starting point, because what we've done is we have considered what's important to us in our own contexts. We've considered what jobs we find interesting, and that sort of whittled down list meets both criteria. So we're minimising the chance that we're going to go into a job or a sector blind with no research or information, but we're also minimising the probability that we're going to find a job uninteresting or not what we thought it was. So at this point, if you've whatever number of roles that you're left with, let's say 3 or 4 as an example, you can do some further research into what is required for those roles. So look at some real life person specifications for roles that are being advertised at the moment, and look at what kind of skills and competencies and experience are required to successfully apply and secure those roles. And you might want at this point to do a bit of a skills audit to look at the kind of skills and experience that employers are looking for and comparing that to where you are at this moment in time and deciding on that basis. And then finally, we've got the transition stage, where this is where you seek out real life opportunities that you'd like to apply for at this moment in time. So that could be a job, as we've mentioned, but equally that also could be a master's degree, a master's program, or PhD as well. It could be pretty much anything in decision making. I've really actually also used this process when buying a new car and a new wardrobe, because they're sort of big purchases and we can't impulse buy them, we can't rush into it. So using this process is really helpful, not only in a careers context but also in other areas of your life as well, and as we've mentioned, when you're out eating with friends too. So once you've decided what you might like to do with your career, and when I say what you might like to do, is the reason I say that is because you can change your mind. It's not set in stone. We can revisit this, okay? We can make sure that basically as we go through life our priorities change, so we need to make sure that that's factored into our decision making. But in order to plan your career, once you've decided what you might like to do moving forward, here are a few tips on how you might like to plan that out. So as I mentioned, you might like to utilise a skills audit to assess where you are at this moment in time and identify what you might need to do to move forward. Doing a skills audit might include making a list of all the skills, the competencies, the experience that is required, and going through each one point by point and marking yourself either red, amber or green like a traffic light based on how confident you are that you have those particular things. So if, for example, a particular role requires communication skills, you might think, well, I've got that from my part-time job or volunteering, I'll mark that as green, I'm confident in that area. Another one might be a specialist qualification that you don't have, so you'd mark that as red. And if there's an element that you think that you have but you could do with more experience, you can mark that as amber. And then what you know that you need to do is, moving forward, in order to make positive steps towards that career path, you know that you might need to fill in those reds and ambers and find opportunities that are going to allow you to do that. The next point is explore opportunities for professional development and growth. And that's what I was alluding to before. It might be that you're a position that you are looking for a graduate career now or looking to apply for a master's degree now. It might be that you're just sussing things out and seeing where you stand. So identifying opportunities for growth is really important, and a skills audit can really support you to do that. You might want to set yourself some short, medium or long-term goals to make the larger goal for the future more achievable. Split it into sort of bite-sized chunks. If you're a visual person like I am, you might want to create a mind map of your current ideas and goals to make sure you're considering all the things that you need to moving forward. As a career service, we've also got professional development plan templates that basically split your goal into manageable bite-sized chunks and allow you to pinpoint key areas to focus on. What I'd also recommend is that you review your goals regularly. Keep coming back to them, keep assessing where you are. And you might need to reassess and adjust your plan as you go if things change. The DOTS model is both cyclical and flexible, so you can keep going round the DOTS model until you are sure, but also you can flex it, as we've talked about, to different contexts and different scenarios. And if you're a bit unsure about your process or you want a bit of guidance on how to get started, you can book an appointment with a careers advisor to talk through your thoughts in moving forward. So finally, some resources and support. Prospects.ac.uk have got some really great resources to help you get started. So they've got a career planner, so if you're unsure about what jobs are out there and you want to basically explore what could be a good fit for you, a career planner will take into consideration your motivations, your values, and give you some options, give you some ideas about what you might like to do. It isn't a science, so it's not a case of this is what you should go away and do. I remember when I did the career planning activity, it came back that the first option was a funeral director, and I'm thinking I couldn't imagine myself doing that. And the next one was a careers advisor, based on my interests and my skills. And it identified that the skills that I have would align well either to a funeral director or to a careers advisor. Now, while the first one wasn't suitable for me, I didn't that didn't align to my idea of success. The second one did, and therefore I felt a little bit more confident about the ideas that I was provided. But again, it's only to give ideas. It's really your own search and your own research will put you in the best possible position to research different roles that are available. Look at the different job profiles and labour market information on prospects as well. You could also attend some careers-focused events, fairs and webinars that are run by the Student Opportunities team at York St John. You might want to develop a LinkedIn profile to connect with individuals within the industry that you're interested in. And it's worth mentioning that the prospects job profiles also have case studies of people who work within that role as well. So really developing your ideas about what it is to work in that organisation or that sector or that role. The YouTube channel for the service, YSJ LaunchPad, have got some really handy videos on flourish and thrive and recognising your values, and again they can really support you during the self stage of this process of the DOTS model. As I mentioned previously, you can book an appointment with a careers advisor. We'll be really interested to help you to navigate your thoughts and feelings about the future and hopefully make a little bit of sense of where you are at that moment in time and think about the next steps that you might want to take. And just come and speak to us. You can email us at careers@yorksj.ac.uk, or you can pop into LaunchPad, which is HG013 in the Holgate building. I hope that you found this video useful in starting to think about career decision making and career planning. My tip for you would be just to look everywhere, to always be asking questions, to be doing lots of research about the future, but ultimately put yourself in the best possible position for success and put yourself right in the centre of that decision making, because ultimately you are the most important factor in it all. If you've got any questions about anything that we've discussed today, please do get in touch and we'll be really happy to help.